Andrea. So Christopher, another side of another plank here is the nonprofit support. You've been working with the Son Irene Fund and working with nonprofits more broadly. What's the Son Irene Fund doing, and where are you telling nonprofits to turn for assistance as they work through their challenges?
Well, there's a few things sort of in advance of that are important, I think, to know. You know, one of the things that the VCF did was right away, the Monday of the storm, was look around the state and called up many of these people and said, what are you doing? And where can we be helpful? And one of the first things that we discovered was that our expertise around food systems and food security was going to be helpful, around farms. Chuck talked about that. And our expertise as grant makers was going to be helpful thinking about the nonprofit community. And we quickly mobilized to think about the nonprofits, because one of the things that we realized was that the nonprofits were really thinking about their community. They were spending all of their time and energy thinking about individuals and families and people that they serve who were in severe crisis. And nobody was really thinking about the damage to the Boys and Girls Clubs, the damage to the daycare centers, to the senior centers, to churches and community centers and other places. And that was a place where we could be really helpful. It came out of, I think, a long history at the foundation of our Learn, Lead, Grow strategy, where we spend a lot of time on the ground in communities learning from nonprofit organizations about what needs are and how to be helpful and supportive. The Sun Nonprofit Irene Fund has raised close to $300,000 now and has been very supportive of about 122 different nonprofits around the state. But it's clearly, as everybody has said on the panel, not enough. That there's a tremendous need out there to support both nonprofit organizations that were explicitly damaged, but also to support nonprofits that have really stretched their capacity and their strategies in order to help people on the ground. The Sun Irene Fund has gone in two directions. Those two directions, helping nonprofits that are damaged, helping nonprofits that are stretching. And it's been tremendous to see the work that's happening and the leadership that's coming out from existing organizations and new organizations.
So that's a nice segue to my next question, which is about housing. Neale, I'll start with you. I want to hear Sara on this. So one of the challenges, so we talk about winter, we talk about spring, we talk about money. We also have mobile homes that are destroyed, people living in floodplains. We've got challenges of urgency, and we've got challenges of long-term planning. Where should we help rebuild? What should our focus be on the next steps? How are you thinking about that? How can people out here start to think about rebuilding and rebuilding in a useful way?
Well, as you noted, the first step is the immediate. We figured there's probably about 1,400 homes that are significantly damaged, including rental properties, mobile homes, etc. A lot of Vermonters affected by this, and not all of them are in either new permanent or kind of more adequate temporary housing at this point. So you're still dealing with an immediate challenge of trying to get folks in places that they'll be able to stay in for some time. Not just through the winter, but while their homes are being rebuilt, while they're thinking about their future. So we've worked very closely with our housing task force, with FEMA directly. We think that nearly all of those folks are in some decent place, but we know that a lot of folks are just off the grid. I mean, they're not registered with FEMA. They haven't let us know. They're just saying, I can make, kind of that Vermont spirit, I can make it work. No problem, I'll make this work. And that's not really the case. And so it won't be really the case when it gets to be 30 below zero. So we're still a real issue there. I mean, on the immediate, people that we consider precariously housed. One set of issues is helping folks rebuild who have lost everything. This is not just a kind of a rebuilding of repairing what's been flooded or what's been damaged, but those really tragic stories where not only the home is gone, but the land is gone and there's a river running through it. What do you do then? No simple answer to that question. And that's not generally, flood insurance might cover some of it. Sometimes they've been covering more than just some. But a lot of those folks, the FEMA grant, even if they got the maximum FEMA grant of $30,200, they could see their home wash away, all their land, hundreds of thousands of dollars in mortgage payments. how do you help them? So there's a need, the party answer to the question is there's a need for helping folks with truly catastrophic needs that go above and beyond just $5,000 or $10,000 assistance or helping them with some services to get their homes rebuilt, or really helping them start their lives over again from the ground up with their home and everything.
I'd like to speak to it from two different aspects. One is the piece that gets back to that case management mentioned earlier. We are seeing the emotional side of housing as well as the physical side. We are seeing folks who should not be staying in the dwelling that was so badly ravaged, but they cannot part with it. They cannot leave because they're 80 years old and that's where they've been living for the last 50 years.
We see folks who are stuck between the insurance and the FEMA and the SBA and the insurance and the FEMA and the SBA around and around, and they're exhausted and they can't think straight about what their options might be. We're seeing folks who are doing the classic way of being homeless in Vermont, which is you double up with someone else and you become invisible. That begins to emerge when the doubling up doesn't work so well, and those situations are rife with emotion also. Those are the kinds of things that we are working with. In addition to that, we're also paying a lot of attention because there's always got to be hope and optimism. And it's our partners, Rob Schultz with Cover down in the Upper Valley, that are looking at the possibilities for a new kind of construction, an inexpensive, green, healthy, an opportunity for thinking about building in Vermont in a different kind of way. And we're looking at those possibilities for some folks. We're dealing also with nightmares around mortgages, people who can still pay the mortgage on that land that might or might not be able to sustain a dwelling in the future, and yet they've got to pay rent somewhere else at the same time. And rental stock, at least on the eastern side of the state, is sparse and expensive. We're gobbling up as much of the New Hampshire property as we possibly can in the rental units. But there's some folks who don't want to live not in Vermont. So lots of feeling involved in this, and the issues are getting, the complex issues, that percent that was referred to as being 5 to 15% of the 7,000. The FEMA folks have told us to expect it to be at the 15% level simply because of the geography of Vermont and the way in which the damage has occurred. So we're thinking in terms of those 15% numbers, and we're just really beginning to see what are going to be our long-term households in need.
So I want to encourage any panel members, if you want to follow up with any of the other panelists, feel free to do that. I'm going to go to Chuck with David. You've got it.
I would just like to follow up on what Sara said. I think my feeling, and I think most of you would agree, that the best way to assist all of these victims is right at the local level. And that's where it can happen. They know, the caseworkers, the folks there know what the unmet needs are. And one of the things that we've decided to do is that we are going to expand the allocations committee that we have in our group. So we're going to have somebody at the local level, so when that case is presented by the caseworker, all of the folks will be at the table and a decision can be made then and there.
So one thing I want to say, you actually made a point, you had a lot of volunteers, and there have been an incredible number of volunteers at all levels, and people are getting tired. People are getting tired, so I want to start with that. The people volunteering at the local level are worn out. What do we need to do to help encourage, to be supportive? What do we need? And I'm looking at David and Neale for starters on this.
Well, let me make one comment about that, because it isn't just about raising money for us and passing money out to victims. It's also about coordinating all of these efforts. And it's also about making people aware of the other services that are available, because at the table we're going to have members of the AHS. There's a lot of stress out there with individuals, and they're going to need attention. We know that. We also have, with our faith-based organizations, the ability to bring in a lot of material and to bring in trained volunteers that know how to muck out, which they did already during this last go-around. And they're still available because we haven't finished that process yet in many parts of the state. So there's more than just money involved here. Another major facet is bringing all of those other folks in, bringing those other services.
One thing that I think is important to, that something that I spend a lot of time thinking about and working on is that out of sight cannot mean out of mind. One thing, I live in South Burlington. We didn't get any damage in South Burlington. And if I didn't drive to Montpelier and do this job every day, I probably wouldn't think about it in the same way. People in my neighborhood might not think, oh, there's still Irene issues, but you don't see it as much. You drive right by Waterbury on the interstate, or you drive around Chittenden County, and you just don't see it. And sometimes you have to get into the community. You have to get into the communities, in the small communities especially. And I think one of the commitments that we're making, and that I ask everyone to make, and I've asked the press to make it especially, is to keep this on the front burner. It's going to be around for a long time. And it's not as simple, I mean, I can crow all I want, but we need a concerted effort of doing that. So forums like this, and they need to continue not just today, next month, but next year. In the legislature, it needs to be an issue. And in doing that, we have to continue to ask for help. We can't stop asking for help from people, whether it's volunteers to actually go and help somebody who's still in need, to let a little bit of that stress off, to help bring either service to them or to help them get the goods they need, or whatever it is. We just can't forget. We have to remind each other not to forget. Out of sight cannot mean out of mind. We're going to be with this for months and years. It's going to take a long time for us to recover. We have to be thinking about it going forward.
One of the things that I wrestle with is that people think, well, Vermont agriculture, that's farming and way of life. No, Vermont agriculture and farms are businesses. They are big businesses. Some of them are multi-million-dollar businesses, many of them are not. But when those farmers have been affected, just like those businesses have been affected, they need to know they're supported in their community. They need to see people making a commitment to them down the road, so they can have the faith that if they're going to borrow the money, that if they're going to build a new business plan, it's not in vain. That there are going to be people at their door looking to do business with them. That's enormously important moral support that we can provide the business people in this state, that we are committed to them, and that we signal that commitment now, so they can begin to, so they have the courage to ask for some help, so they take the time to make the business plan that will enable them to stay in business and go to the bank and find some new financial partners.
Thanks, John. Christopher.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple things to this question of sustainability and taking care of each other. One of the first grants that the VCF made was actually to the Vermont Folklife Center, located just down the street from us in Middlebury. They got a call the day after the flood from a woman in Stockbridge who, at her first opportunity, said, we need to tell our story. And I think that that's a huge piece of recovery, is being able to tell your story and to record your story and to have people listen to you. And that has become true, I think, increasingly across the state, that we hear this over and over again, that part of people's recovery effort is being able to feel like they've been listened to, like they've been heard, like somebody cares. And there have been several other examples of work that's beginning to happen on that realm. The Children's Literacy Foundation, which is based in Waterbury, where there was a huge impact, has started working to collect stories and collect artwork from children in Waterbury. That's part of their recovery effort. And I think that's one of the things that we really want to think about as we move forward. And I know that donors are thinking about that as well, that mental health issues and recovery as a community is going to be important. There's a lot of trauma, and thinking about how we do that work is vital as well.